He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Kia ora, ko Kadamri Kumar. Welcome to Here Now. This week, producer William Ray takes us on a tour of central Wellington with historian Lynette Shum. Lynette was born and raised in Wellington, and she's the descendant of some of the very earliest Chinese migrants to the city. She spent years uncovering the hidden traces of the capital's long-vanished Chinatown.
The whole city is really changed from those Chinatown days. But see, if you can imagine, these huge buildings with big footprints used to be lots of Chinese shops like greengrocers, butchers, bread shops, bakers, haberdasherers. I love that word.
Each summer, Wellington Chinese historian Lynette Shum takes walking tours of the square kilometre or so around Haining and Frederick Streets, an area which in the early to mid-20th century was the beating heart of Wellington's Chinatown. But this story actually starts back in the 1860s, in the wake of the Otago gold rush.
Gradually, the gold did die down, so the next centre after that, Wellington, became more popular.
By this time, the late 19th and early 20th century, Wellington wasn't just the capital, it was the largest, most prosperous city in the country, the hub of finance and industry, much like Auckland is today. And just like Auckland today, Wellington was a hub for migration, especially Te Aro, the area of land stretching from the harbour towards Aro Valley in one corner and the Basin Reserve in the other.
These were very small, humble workers' cottages and light industrial buildings, and very quickly lost any sheen that it did have. It became run down and bedraggled, and that's when the immigrants could go in. It was cheap because it was very humble. It was close to the city where they worked. You can see people come off the port, hop off the boat, pay their poll tax here and just wander up here. So it's really in a good position.
There were many obstacles Chinese people faced in coming to New Zealand in the early 1900s. Prime Minister Richard Seddon had introduced harsh laws, including that poll tax Lynette mentioned, which were explicitly intended to exclude Chinese people from New Zealand. However, in spite of those laws, many did find a way to come and settle in the heart of the capital.
You didn't have English language skills, you didn't have money, you didn't have your network to make it in the Pākehā world, but what you did have was your family and clan around you, determination to work very hard. There were very few options. There was market gardens growing vegetables and selling them. There was the retail side of that, selling fruit and vegetables, opening fruit and vegetable shop. And the third major one that's still in New Zealand is laundries. And I had a retired launderer telling me we got more fleas than pennies, which is just gruesome. It was really hard work, but you could make a living.
Over time, a Chinese community formed, centred on Haining and Frederick Streets.
And what's this very decrepit-looking, I think, former church here?
You're absolutely right. So this is the former Chinese mission.
Lynette and I are standing on the corner of Frederick Street and Taranaki Street. Mostly it's a vacant lot with a small stone church in one corner.
They paid for and built this. I think it was 1905. I'm sure my mother just loved it when we were all shepherded out of the door on Sunday mornings and we didn't see her till lunchtime. She could have all that time to do all the stuff that she needed to do to run a house as a mother of 4 children.
This old church was clearly on its last legs. The facade was held in place by steel beams and thick nylon straps. But there is a plan to refurbish and renovate it. Across the road from the church, renovation was well underway on the facade of another fragment of Wellington's Chinese history.
Under the plastic covering there is a compass and set square.
This symbol's usually associated with the Freemasons, but not in this case.
You can still see those Chinese words, the Qigong Tong. This is the secret sworn brotherhood of men. apparently had quite a big buy-in from the Chinese community. It's secret in that they wanted to appear important and prestigious, and building this beautiful building along classical Chinese lines would give you that status. But what goes on inside, once the doors are shut, I have no idea what they do.
Lynette says this secret society was involved in some slightly subversive activities, trying to influence politics back in China. But the details are a bit unclear. There were also more formal institutions representing the interests of Chinese people in Wellington, especially after the Second World War.
In some lights you can sort of see a vague shadow just to the right of that bay window that says in Chinese characters, New Zealand Chinese Association. That's repeated in English under these top windows. This used to be the headquarters of the New Zealand Chinese Association. So during the war there was huge community attempts to fundraise to support the war effort back home and then the rebuilding of China after the Japanese invasion. But then, you know, things changed in China, the political situation changed there, and so the Chinese Association was left with all this money, and they decided, well, they'll buy a building and have their home headquarters. So they had offices up on top, and the middle was a hostel. So people just arriving from China or from elsewhere, they could stay there, and it was really, really cheap. I heard in the early 1970s it was $5. It's really interesting to me, like within a kilometre is still the essence of a lot of Chinese associations and businesses.
Within that kilometre, on Haining Street, is also a reminder of the darker side of the story of Chinese migration to New Zealand.
Here we've got in the ground, in Chinese and in English, born in Punyu County, Canton, China, Zhou Gong-myung, miner, killed by gunshot 24th of September 1905, remembered centenary 2005. And I love the way the people in this building here have put lettuces in the garden here as a tribute, I guess, to the beginnings that many Chinese have here.
The murderer was Lionel Terry, a white supremacist who'd travelled the country distributing pamphlets which demonised Chinese migrants to New Zealand. After the shooting, he turned himself in at a local police station, saying he'd carried out the murder to bring attention to the issue of Chinese migration. Just down the road from the memorial is a place which has a special significance for Lynette herself.
Just back round that corner is the laundry where my grandfather washed clothes, and my grandmother for many, many years afterwards. But we're also standing, maybe here, on the site of the very first official Chinese restaurant in Wellington.
Oh, really?
And that was the Nanking restaurant. Fresh noodles made every day on the site, and things like duck and roast pork, and people find wonton soup very popular. And you could go round the back and watch the noodles being made, but also with a billy to get it filled so you could go and take it home. Early takeaways. I've got my soft shoes on today.
It's fascinating getting this whole different perspective, because, you know, I've lived here for 12 years now, and you get this sort of totally different image of what this place used to be.
It is fascinating because until I started doing this research, I had no idea either. I had no idea there used to be a Chinatown and a thriving Chinese community here in the heart of the city. And then I learnt about the different county organisations. I remember going as a child for dinners at the Punfa Association, or in those days when I was growing up it would have been the Punyu Association. Food was a big thing.
Yeah. It always is when you're young, isn't it?
Lynette Shum hosts walking tours of Wellington's hidden Chinatown every summer. So if you'd like to go along yourself, we've included a link on our website.
Thanks, William, and be sure to follow and listen to Here Now wherever you find your podcasts. This episode of Here Now was produced by William Ray and the sound engineer was William Saunders. I'll be back next week with another episode of Here Now. Thanks for listening.